around us to generate these particular paths that certain people can go, where certain people can be successful and other people are going to pretty much eat themselves and fight and kill and destroy each other. And in that separation, the system itself continues to grow and continues to maintain that space of being the leaders of the masses of people. That was really focusing on the macro. This video, this list, is going to go into the micro experiences that we have to deal with on a daily basis and that we have been dealing with for hundreds of years now. There might be some things that I miss here. If I miss some things and you want to add to this list, go ahead and leave it in the comment section. But this is just a general idea to get people thinking, because a lot of people don't really understand when you mention racism, when you mention the system of racism, white supremacy, people who are looking at it from the outside in can't really feel that experience. They can't really empathize with what you're talking about. And the people who really on the far edge of that lack of empathy, even beyond even sympathy, not that we're asking for any sympathy, the people on the far end of that are not even really seeing where we're coming from as a place to be coming from. They're downplaying that anything even exists in the reality that we have to deal with on a regular basis. And when it's that extreme, I don't really care. This is not for them. This is more for the people who are kind of on the fence, and to mostly connect with people who are having to deal with this, because we don't allow ourselves a lot of the times to really see the shit that we have to deal with, because we have to deal with it so much. We don't want to see it. We don't want to have to think about it. But when you do see it and you process it, or you hear somebody else see it and process it, it makes you feel better in a way, because you know you're not alone out there. You know that everybody's having to deal with this. And in some ways it does empower you to realize what you've had to go through. We have to downplay a lot of the times what we have to go through, because a lot of the times people have been downplaying the experiences that we have to go through. I mean, you see this on a regular basis. Anytime anybody talks about the system of racism, white supremacy, and it being downplayed, we're seen as overreacting. We're seen as not really having a case. Even in these truther communities, so-called critical thinkers, when you bring up these stories, like in the last video, presenting your argument, you're going to have people saying that, oh, well, this is still about humanity, or victimizing themselves and saying that, well, we have to go through things too. And, that whole, regardless of what you say your intentions are, the very nature of presenting that perspective when people are talking about the shit that we have to go through, it is a form of dismissiveness. It's a form of downplaying. It's like when somebody has just gone through something and they're like explaining to you how fucked up it is, or just not saying anything, and then somebody comes along and says, yeah, I just lost my dog, or I just lost it, and they're just kind of just like making it about them. Here's a perfect example of the narcissism once again. You're explaining your whole world of experience, and somebody has to make it about them. That's the definition of narcissism. Controlling the dialogue, controlling the narrative, and inherently downplaying you. And in these communities, most of the time, these individuals have good intentions. They're not meaning harm. But this is why I do the things that I do on this channel, say the things I say on this channel, is because this is the shit that needs to be said. This passive-aggressive, not meaning any harm kind of shit needs to be known, because that's the stuff that's allowing these systems to stay afloat. The nice ones who don't think that they're doing any wrong, who are subconsciously and unconsciously, and in many ways consciously, allowing these systems to stay afloat and grow at your expense. It's the middle class. It's not the extreme KKK members out there that are holding this system afloat. It's the KKK representatives, the step-down reps, who allow this system to continue to stay afloat in the middle class, in the mass of the middle class. It's a very small majority of people who are aware of what's going on and who are in their eyes on your side, whatever that means. But the majority of people who are allowing these systems to stay afloat, it's a big group. The people who are on your side are seriously outnumbered. It's a percentage of a percentage. When you factor in that the majority of people are mind controlled, 80, 90%, you're talking about the 80, 90th percentile of people. And within that 90th percentile of people, 90th percentile of that 90th percentile of people are still dealing with subconscious and unconscious shit stemming from the systems of racism, white supremacy, and everything that stems off of that. They're still dealing with that or not at all dealing with it. And then the percentage of that, the leftover percentage after those 90% are hardcore, standing strong in their racism, in their bigotry, in their prejudice. They're hardcore KKK members. They don't give a fuck about you. That you have nothing to say. This is their land. These are their resources. This is their world. And you're just some kind of animal existing inside of it. These numbers are stacked against us. Incredibly stacked against us. This little YouTube truther community is not a really good representation of the masses of people that are out there. You have to be out there walking around. You have to be there out there on the streets talking to people to really see how deep this shit goes. This is part of the reason why I really enjoy like interacting with people when I play disc golf, because you get a very clear interaction with the community to some degree, but you get a pretty good representation of what's going on when you talk to people face to face, because they can't hide stuff. And in the 3 years that I've been playing, everything that I've been saying on this YouTube channel has been influenced in some ways by those experiences. I've had to deal with racist shit in professional tournaments, let alone just playing out there for fun. I've had to deal with this shit in a professional setting. And this is very recently. We're in 2022 and you're still dealing with this shit. So I'm going to go through this list of pretty much our perspective. What we've had to deal with, what we have to deal with, in the environment that we have to wake up to every day. We have to put this world into our minds as we walk out the door. Your children, your babies are being installed by this, by their parents, by the television, by their family members. Proof of this, like I said, look at the doll experiments. Look at the brown-eyed, blue-eyed experiments. These are all existing inside of us. Before we even develop our brains completely, before we even become adults, we're programmed with this. And like I said, keep in mind, all of these things that I'm having to list off right now, these things first exist in the psyche. They have to exist non-physically before they become a physical thing. So keep that in mind when you consider where this stuff came from, how deeply it's existing in our world, and the counterbalance to that. If we're having to deal with this, what is the opposite to that? Keep that in mind. If we're getting the shit end of the stick, then who's getting the good end of the stick? Because that's the counterbalance. It's 1 for you, 10 for them. In many cases, it's negative 10 for us and 100 for you. We're having to dig ourselves out of this hole. We're put in a hole before we even start school. And we have to dig ourselves out of that when other people are put on a pedestal before they start school. This is the difference that we're talking about. This is how our experiences are not the same. There is no level playing field here. When we bring up these experiences and somebody says, oh, well, this is a human issue, the powerful against the not powerful, how far away, how dismissive is that? This is why we're saying we need to separate from the people who think like this. And like I said, largely a lot of these people have so-called good intentions. They're a part of these new age, truther, conspiracy communities to share information. They're a part of these communities. And yet, since they haven't done that internal work, they are still working against you. Still maintaining the system without even realizing it. So these are some of the things that we have to deal with every single day, in every thought, in every experience, every time we go to the grocery store, every time we go to the bank, every day we go to school, every time we go to work. We're driving down the street and you look to your left and you see somebody else driving and they give you a look. What's in that look? That energy being exchanged from just a look from somebody. Anytime you have any kind of gatherings, big group gatherings, what happens there? Oh, that's a gang. Family reunions in a park. Oh, they're loud. Oh, put your stuff over here. Hide it because there's people around here. What do you mean when you say there's people around? See, they're thinking like that, but how does that exist in our psyche? When we see them, we know that they're thinking about us that way. How does that affect us? These are all psychological things that exist in society. And if you look into any kind of even a basic understanding of epigenetics, you can understand that the nature of your surroundings, what you had to deal with every day, it changes your genetic structure. This is what epigenetics is. The system is well aware of this. So if our systems, our codes are being genetically shifted towards the negative, how does that affect us? How does that affect the world? And you have the opposite happening for other people. Genetically, they're being shifted, they're being manipulated by the society to feel, act, and exist a certain way. And that carries on through generations. So, every day, when we're walking around in the store, you have to be prepared. When you go into a store, when you're leaving a store, you're already accused of stealing, of theft. You're seen like that in society. We don't realize it a lot of the times, but if you're really paying attention to your actions, we have to make sure that people see the receipt in our hand so they don't fuck with us. We have to make sure people see us bagging our stuff a certain way when you're in the self-checkout line. You can feel the eyes looking at you. You can feel even people who don't even work in the store. They'll team up to make sure you're staying in line, because you have to stay in line in order for them to be in control of the line. You have to be on your best behavior. If you're not on your best behavior, you cannot be controlled. So they police us. This is what the Karen epidemic is. We're having to dealing with that shit. So in that world, they have the justice system on their side against us. An entire world, an army of weaponized people who are against us. Highway patrol, city police, sheriffs, the feds, the CIA, around the world, locally, in your community, so on and so forth. It's designed to keep certain people up and other people down. The biggest drug dealers in the world are not Pookie and Ray Ray down the street. They're your CIA agents communicating with the people in Colombia. The gun dealers of the world. How do these guns get into the communities? Do you see weapon manufacturers in the inner cities? No. How are those weapons being brought in? You have to have money to get weapons on that kind of scale. You have to have money to get guns and drugs on that kind of scale. We don't have that. So we get where it comes from. Where's that stuff come from? It comes from the people who have the money, who have the resources, who have the connections. This was all broken down by people many times over. Look into Gary Webb. If you didn't know anything about how the drugs and the guns were getting put into the communities in San Jose and the Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco, he was assassinated. I think it was the Mercury News, Gary Webb, for bringing this stuff to the attention of the masses. Look at the movie with Tom Cruise. Well, they made a fucking Tom Cruise movie about this shit. Moving guns, moving drugs. in the Iran-Contra shit in South America or Central America. And everything that was going on with that whole world, they get slaps on the wrist. We get life sentences. So on a regular day basis, cops, we're having that fear to live every day. When you're driving, every time you're on the freeway, you don't even have to see a highway patrol. You just are in that dark ass cloud of, at any moment, these people can pull me over for whatever reason they want. And I could be shot. I could be dragged out of the car and taken to jail just because they don't like me, on average. Whereas, on the other hand, people have no fear of that system. They are empowered. They think that system is working for them, and it is. These police officers work for so-called white people, and that's why they talk to them like that. How dare you? My tax money pays your salary. You can't talk to me. You can't do this to me. I am an American. They're using their rank in society, and they know too. This is why they come after you. I literally had a police officer pull me over for my taillights because my taillights were, before they were, hip and in fashion with that whole, like, chrome sort of looking taillight, and then in the center it's red, but, that it's clear, it's, like, reflective, it's not all red light taillights. It was when I was young. It was, like, my first car ever, and it came with those lights, but within a month of me being back in California, because I bought the car in Virginia, when I came back to California, within a month I'm pulled over on the freeway by highway patrol, and he says, well, this is a different incident on the freeway. I got pulled over. So the light thing, I got pulled over in Fremont, which, you just don't even drive in Fremont. This asshole-ass cop pulled me over for those taillights and was just a total asshole. He's like, you can't have those taillights. You can't do that. They have to be such and such. I was like, what? He was being aggressive so I could be aggressive back so he could fuck with me. This is one of those cases. Gave me a ticket. I went on my way. But the other time, these happened within, like, weeks of each other. I was on the freeway and I had license plate covers that were blue. This was the Fast and Furious time frame, okay? So don't judge me. So anyway, I had these stupid-ass license plate covers on the license plate, and I got pulled over by highway patrol on the freeway. He went through all this trouble of pulling me over on the freeway for the fucking license plate cover. I said, are you serious? He said, yes. You can't have that at all. I was like, why? He said, because it distracts. Like, you can't see the whole thing. I said, you can see it, though. He said, but you just can't have it. I said, all right, well, I'll just take them off right now. He said, no, I have to give you a ticket for it. You can't take them off now. I was like, so you're going to give me a ticket for something I can't have, but I can't take it off right now? I said, yeah. I was like, all right, man, whatever. So you're really going to give me a ticket for that? And this is what he said, verbatim. Yeah, I have to. Sometimes you got to get the little fish. This is what this fucking cop said. But this is the thing. These cops do this shit because they're fishing. They see you. They know what you look like. They know what kind of cars you drive. They know this whole thing. They do this because they're hoping to smell some weed. They're hoping to see some kind of weapon. They're hoping to catch a bigger fish while they're fishing for a smaller fish. They're looking to fuck with you. Whereas on the other hand, they're trying to avoid other people because they know other people with money have the ability to get out of that stuff. If you don't have money, if you just got some little bucket-ass, wannabe Fast and Furious-ass car, then that's easy pickings. They know you're not going to go to court to try to fight it. They know all this stuff. They're just making their quota at your expense, funneling money out of your community, off of your family, into their world. What kind of shockwave how does that exist in the whole world? Add up those numbers. Like redlining, like housing prices. We are devalued while their resources, their lives are valued through the roof. How does that affect generations? So we're accused of stealing, accused of violence, accused of drugs, weapons. We get more tickets in the world. They get less tickets. They're looking to persecute us. We're seen as criminals. So they want the big time. They're hoping to pull you over for a license plate cover, but discover that you got a trunk full of weed, a trunk full of guns, a trunk full of drugs. They're hoping to do that. Whereas the other side, they pull you over. Oh, go ahead, have a nice day. Thank you, sir. It's a completely different world that we live in. And like I said, think about the implications of this in every day. You don't even have to see a cop, but you're living in that fear to some degree, driving down the road. A ticket like that, 50, 60, 80, $200, that's affecting people's lives. People are living paycheck to paycheck at best. And when you get hit with some shit like that, that shockwaves through the whole family. They know this. That's why they're doing it on purpose. We get harsher sentences. The judge sees us and sees a criminal, and they're in charge of determining whether or not you're going to continue on your path of crime. So they see us as criminals and see them as, oh, well, this is where the whole white tears and white women crying comes from. White women go to court, cry their heads, oh, it's okay, baby, you'll be okay. I'm just going to give you 20 hours of community service. A black woman goes in there, doesn't even cry. She's just sitting up there or maybe she could cry. 2 years as opposed to 20 hours of community service. 2 years of prison time. 5 years of probation. Whatever it is, it's completely different. How many wrongful convictions are there? When I look at Instagram, just recently I'm seeing all these people released after 12 years of being wrongfully convicted, accused of rape. I just saw a story of a guy went to a jail or to a court or something with his friend because his friend was scared to go by himself, and his friend who just went with the person who was going to court got accused of rape and was in jail for, I think it was 12 years. And they think just settling out of court, oh, you get some money. No, you can't get that life back. How many of those cases are happening over and over and over again to us because of the way society is designed, whereas the opposite happens for other people? They're accusing us because it's installed. Their genetics are tailored to accuse us, to go against us. The genetics affected by the world are designed to attack us. How many fatal encounters are happening when this atmosphere is affected? You see in our communities, in the inner cities, so-called white people are the police officers policing our communities. They're having to deal with that shit. How many times are we killed? There's a whole movement against this shit. And even that gets taken over and used to work against us, to funnel money back into their systems. This is what the Black Lives Matter movement was. Taking that and funneling money back into the Democratic Party. This is why you have George Soros behind all this shit. This is how complex these systems are. You can't even share with the world that you're being attacked without having that movement taken over and funneled back into the system that's attacking us. When our children in schools get into altercations or on the streets, they're treated like and charged a lot of the times as adults. You see these cops throwing little girls around, putting their knees in their back, bending their bodies in all kind of fucked up ass ways, just like being completely aggressive towards us. But they don't even see so-called white girls as an issue at all. And a lot of times they're the ones doing the dirt. When you see, this is something that a lot of people don't know, and I didn't even write this one down, but just remembered it. When you see all this graffiti and shit in the inner cities, what does that do? What do you think is happening? You think, oh, these people living in this world, They don't respect their community. This wouldn't happen in the suburbs. This wouldn't happen in the Oakland Hills. This wouldn't happen here and there. No. There's something wrong with them. They live dirty. They're savages. The fucking thing you don't see and realize is that the majority of the graffiti that happens in our so-called inner city communities, it's not us. It's not our shit. A lot of the graffiti that's happening in our communities is so-called white, angsty-ass little boys coming from the suburbs thinking that they're gangster, thinking that they're cool, driving out of their community because they don't want to get caught in their community doing it. So they drive to the inner cities because they know if they get caught by the cops there too, they're just going to get released. But they drive to our communities to fuck up our communities and then go right back to the suburb. It's a little inner scoop into what goes on in our world down here. A lot of people don't know that shit. But when you go and see that, keep that in mind. So yeah, in schools, our kids get treated like adults. They yell, they think that we're aggressive, they also think that you're dumb. There's a lot of our kids that get placed in special needs programs because these teachers don't know how to. We learn differently. This is why I said our differences are important. We're a different kind of people. We learn differently. We teach differently. We process information differently. There's no one. This is what I was saying in that last video with the whole human shit. The whole education system is designed to make you conform. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It's a conformity program to filter people out. You're over here, you're a good one, you're a bad one. This is how you act. This is why they have that whole acting white thing out there. This is another thing that I should have added to this list that I didn't. Acting white, what does that mean? And what does acting black mean? I just saw a comedian say this the other day about how when you first meet a white person, when they first meet us, it's like they're filling out an application on how to be black. They're trying to, or in a job interview of how to be black. They have to act extra black, whatever the fuck that even means. And then he joked and said, "Oh yeah, well you don't see black people having to do that unless it's in a job interview. Then you have to act white. Then you're applying for a white position." See, this is a joke, but it's not. It's a reality. And then behind that, what's behind that in that psyche? Acting black is what? Acting white is what? And that's connected to intelligence. So when you have teachers in position of authority over black and white children, how are they going to treat the white children? How are they going to treat the black children? See that percentage-wise in success rates. They're going to get more focus, they're going to get less focus. They're going to be in more trouble, they're going to be in less trouble. The systems are going to be designed to work for them and work against us. Colleges, same old. It's the same thing. It goes shockwaves through the generation. And this is the stuff that maintains poverty, that maintains these haves and have-nots programs relating specifically to race. And then people are just going to say, if you don't lay it all out like this, people are going to be empowered with that shallow-ass understanding of, well, these are human problems. It's going to consistently go on like that. And like I said, this video is not to put any kind of woe is me, like, pity party shit out there. No, these are the facts that a lot of people can't see. When you see them individually, it affects you differently. When you see them all put together, it's harder to go against. It's harder to dismiss. It's harder to downplay. Individually, people can shoot them down. This is what happens all the time in this linear interaction on the internet. They hear you say one thing, you talk about one thing, and they shut it down, or they make it about everybody. But when you put them all together like this, it hits a little different. So fatal encounters, we get treated differently. Kids get treated differently. The fear that gets programmed from childhood, the conformity that exists, the perspective of reality that exists from childhood, shockwaves through adulthood, shockwaves through generations, gets passed down to the next generation. Teachers treating us differently. They don't care about us. They think we're dumb. They think we're violent. Our names are even aggressive. When you fill out a job application, they've done studies with this. More ethnic sounding names are getting thrown away while plain Jane ass names are getting accepted in universities, in jobs, so on and so forth. Look at what that does to a people. People are changing their names so they don't have that happen to them. What does that do to your culture? What does that do to your relationship to your culture? Speaking of names, we don't even have our own names because our history has been deleted. We're having to live with slave names. And they're living with slave master names. So the slave story still goes on. Our names are aggressive. Look at the movie Big with Tom Hanks, which was another story. It's a fucked up storyline. But anyway, he's a kid, grown up, has a relationship with this woman, a grown-ass woman, which is, like I said, the fucked up part. But anyway, the part I want to focus on is the job interview. He's literally a child in a grown man's body. And since he fits the picture that they're looking for, a plain white man, he's stuttering along, answering, lying, and just like playing this role as a white man. And they're giving him the benefit of the doubt and actually give him a job. He's fucking it up. He's lying. He doesn't know what to say, but he can stumble through society and get offered a job because they're giving him the benefit of the doubt. If it was us, we're already seen as dumb. We're seen as violent. If we're in that position, stumbling, you stumble once and you're cast out. You're thrown to the side. You can't slip one little inch or you're done. If it was a so-called black man in that position where Tom Hanks was, there ain't no way in hell he would have got a job if he was answering questions the way he was. They would have seen him as dumb. They would have seen him as some kind of other way. And he would have been kicked out. But this is that perspective in society where with them, they have to give them the benefit of the doubt. And they're doubting you consistently. This happens in disc golf, in sporting events. They have to round down with you and round up with them. It's also a competitive thing too, but a lot of the times, I've confirmed this with other people, they're rounding down your shot. Oh, that's OB. That's out of bounds. Or that's this far. That's this many feet away. When they throw it, oh, you're close. You're good. Oh, that's inbounds. I've been playing for enough times. I pay attention to the world enough. I've confirmed it with enough people to know that this is a real thing that happens all the time. And since it's an unconscious thing that's happening, they're not aware of it. But this is how the world is. And we have to fight through that. We have to power through that. Even on in your ESPN, the top 10 plays of the night in basketball. This is an easy one to see if you're paying attention to it. And I think I mentioned this before. A so-called white basketball player can do a behind-the-back pass, and that's like seen as the best fucking thing to ever happen. A so-called black man has to do a behind-the-back pass, run down the court, do a backflip, and an alley-oop dunk in order to get the number one play. This is how the differences between them rounding up for them and down for us. I've seen plays just like, I was like, how is that number 2 and the other play before that is number 8? Like, how is that even? Oh, it's because a so-called white man did it. It's crazy, but if you start paying attention to it, you'll see. And for people who are already, watching that stuff or knowing, you already know this. It's laughable at this point. And don't let them dunk. Don't let a so-called white man dunk on a so-called black man. Then that shit's over with. They love that shit. That's way up there on the list. That's number one for like weeks. They'll keep playing that shit. And these interactions are known in society. Like you have artists like Common, there's even a song called Black Maybe, where in that song he says, I heard a white man's yes is a black maybe. He's talking about this list. He's talking about what's going on in society. You can stumble through life where we have to fight. We have to dress up in suits and fight. And even then, we just get a maybe. You just wake up, show up to a job interview in sweatpants, and you got the job, and you're gonna get promoted sooner than us. You're gonna get more pay. Look at that's another thing I didn't write down. The pay differences in these jobs. The way they pay women less, they pay so-called minorities. And look at just the word. We're called a minority. We're the majority of the fucking world. Look at that fucking psychological shit that's going on. Call them minorities. Make them feel minor. Make them feel less than us. Another part of that is the inconsistencies with us being called African American, but they're not called European American. And when the whole world thinks of American, they think of a so-called white person. They're not from here. When you go back predating so-called Native Americans, we're from here. But you can't tell that story. And if they find out about that stuff, they're not going to tell you those stories. They have. They've gone into what was like the salt flats, I think in New Mexico or something like that. They dug down far and they found footprints that predate when the so-called Native Americans were supposed to come over here from the Siberian ice shelf or whatever. Tens of thousands of years predating them. Yet they're the Native Americans. We can't even be seen as regular Americans. We're not even like original Americans. We're African American. We're from Africa. Get the fuck out of here. So all these interactions that we have to deal with, this is all adding up to success and survival. Being able to build your own business, take care of your family, buy a house, have a job, go to school. It's plus 10 for you, negative 10 for us. We're barely being able to survive, living day by day. Can't even put food on the table, and you're living in gluttony. This is the world we have to fight through every day, and we have to deal with every day. Just that, just knowing that exists, is genetically shifting us and genetically shifting you. You don't have that. You don't have to deal with that. That lightness to be able to float through reality without a care in the fucking world, those genetics are chef's kiss. They're fucking lovely. Oh, I fucking love life. Just loving world, loving life, loving the world. Skipping down to work. Let me jump on my Segway and go to work. I love it here. This is what that Silicon Valley life shit is. They love them. Oh, I fucking love this world. Technology. We're gonna be on Mars very soon. Fuck. America's the best. Cloud 9. They are loving that shit. And we're barely surviving. Like I said, we're sharing this shit. This is another thing to, like I said, to help people. With all of this, we're still making it. Not only making it, some people are in their fucked up ass world, thriving in that shit. And it's the threat to them. It's a fucking threat to them. They can't stand that you're doing what you're doing with the whole fucking world against you and doing it better than them. They can't stand that shit. This happens in sports. This happens in the workplace. This happens in school. They can't stand that shit. And they actually adjust the whole system to keep you from doing that. And we still make it. In their fucked up, generic ass world. Oh, they can't stand that shit. Even in the truther community, there's an example of this shit when I'm saying this information right now. They can't stand you knowing what the fuck is going on. Sharing with people the situation as it is. They can't stand it. And they will try to project onto you to make you look, act, and feel a certain way. You're talking about this stuff? Oh, he's a victim. Oh, it's not just about you, it's all humans. Oh, well, us white people have to deal with stuff too. You're so many orders of magnitude away from realizing what I'm talking about right now. This is not events. I'm not talking about events. I'm talking about genetics. When you put the existence on the same, oh yeah, well, you have to deal with these things because you say these things and you're about these things and I'm also about these things and I say these things too. So we're the same. No, we're not the same. The story isn't even supposed to be talked about in the same category. I'm talking about genetics. I'm talking about psychology. You weren't raised like that. You don't have to walk out the door and think like this. It's not the same. For people who do think it's the same, that's like saying that a child, 7-year-old child that says he loves this girl or something like that, that love is the same kind of love as two like deep ass, heavily like knowledgeable and spiritually empowered people, healed people, like 80-year-old people, people who've been doing this shit for years, and they're in a relationship. They've been in a relationship for 60 years, and they've been on that forward thinking process forever, and they love each other. That's like saying that 8-year-old love is the same as the 80-year-old love, their relationship. It's not the same. You can call it love all you want, but it's not the same. Your experiences with what you're dealing with, it's only similar in the way you frame it, in the word love, in the word experience. The experience itself is not the same. And like I said, this all adds up to success and survival. And when you have people living in that kind of reality, this is why people choose violence. They choose a life of crime because they're trying to fucking survive. People who have kids and shit, they're not allowed to work. They're not allowed to go to school. They're seen a certain way by the teachers. They get thrown out of school. They can't get a job. And they go into violence just to provide for their family, for themselves. And then when they get labeled as criminals and violent and all this other shit, the society, what the society is doing to us, the genetics, the psychology, that's never taken into account. They think it's actually you because they promote it like that. This is what your Fox News channel does. Your history books do this. You were savages back then. You're savages now. They think it's you. They put it on you and avoid their engagement, their manipulating of the world around you that forces you into these situations. And they avoid that because they want to avoid their crimes. They talk about the drugs and the guns and commuting and black on black crime, but they don't talk about the CIA and the FBI creating the conditions for that to happen. They don't talk about the Western world creating the situation for that to happen. Because that makes them the biggest criminals in the fucking world. So in order to avoid their criminal behavior, they have to criminalize you. This is what this whole list of shit is. This is what forcing you into survival is. Because they know their actions. They know their people. They know their history. They have committed the worst crimes on humanity, on the world, ever. And you can't say a fucking word about it. They're maintaining the system against us and for them. This is what all this shit adds up to. Putting guns and drugs in the community, giving us shitty schools, no grocery stores, liquor stores everywhere, promoting cigarettes, promoting alcohol, promoting sugar consumption, promoting obesity, calling it our culture, diabetes and all this fucked up ass food. This is our culture, soul food. No, that's death. Slave death food. They love that shit. They're making TV shows out of that shit. TV shows exploit this ratchet ass behavior. They avoid our successes and amplify our ratchetness. They show them in a particular light and us in another light. Avoiding our success, avoiding our intelligence, programming our kids, removing our history, and lying about theirs constantly. This is what your television shows are about. Stealing our inventions, taking credit for our accomplishments, doing everything they can to avoid our accomplishments because it makes them feel twice small because of shit we got to deal with. Just to break even. What we got to go through just to break even, let alone be successful. So when you're successful, they feel infinitely small, infinitely insignificant. They feel like, holy shit, this person had to go. So they will do everything they can to bring you down in any way possible. This is why I said like they like to round down with you and round up with them. In sports, this happens. I'll give another example with disc golf. And it's not just with race, but it's part of it too. You'll see how. And if you're really like talented, people have a tendency to want to bring you down. They think that they need to. It's their job to keep your ego in check. So they do that by constantly trying to bring you down. And it becomes like a joke. It's like, oh yeah, we got to keep you in check. Who gave you, like, first of all, who says that this person has an ego problem just because they're good at something, first of all. Second of all, who empowered you to keep somebody else in check? Where does that power come from? But that's a thing in sports, but it's not only in sports. From our perspective, this is a thing with us. So-called white people do this with us constantly, having to keep you in check. And in sports, it's a double down thing. If you're talented and not white in sports, they gotta double keep you in check. And because they're doing it light and it's all fun and games, it's just for fun. This is how we interact. Nah, motherfucker, nah, no. I know what it's about, and it happens. You can see a lot of people like let that shit come out when they're drinking a lot too. So you'll see a lot of this behavior get amplified even more when they're drinking because the truth comes out. So that's just another little addition to the situation. Home loans, car loans, business loans, all of these are affected. How does that affect legacies? How does that affect generations? Even survival. Can't get approved for a home loan. Can't get approved for a business loan. Other people have half the qualifications, but they look the part, getting way better rates approved for their loans, setting legacies for people, and keeping us from even getting up off the fucking ground, even able to survive. Destroying entire communities with redlining, with the way they design society, running freeways, building freeways through the inner cities, through our neighborhoods, completely destroying our neighborhoods with their infrastructure, ripping our families from us with gentrification, ripping our communities out of us, destroying our history, gentrifying our culture, our communities, everything just being destroyed. They hit you on every end. Kill your community, kick you out of that community, build up the community once you're out of there, and profit on both ends. We have legacy prevention programs. They have legacy amplification programs. And people are denying that this shit even exists. Giving you the whole get over it, move on mentality. We're all equally oppressed. No, we're not. We have different things that we have to deal with and get over and heal from. We are not the same. And saying this whole, the elite, the ones in power against all people, all races, don't talk about racism. Okay. Medical facilities poisoning us, giving like in the sports thing. They think we're overreacting. They don't see us the same way. In the crying thing, a white woman cries, the whole world shuts down. A black woman cries, they'll step on her. They don't give a fuck. They'll treat her differently. How many people have died in medical facilities because of that atmosphere? People, nurses, doctors, downright straight up racist to the core, hating us. How many people die because of their hate? Not properly diagnosing us, profiting off of giving us this medication, giving your grandparents, your parents medications that are going to kill them sooner, and making a money off of their debt. This is some dark, dark ass shit that's going on every day, right now. Prescribing drugs to your family members over other people because they know it's going to kill them, but it's going to kill them over a certain amount of time. They're going to make money off of their slow death, and the system is going to make money off of their death certificates. This is some dark, fucked up shit. Oh, but we're all equally being attacked by the elite? Kiss my ass. Entertainment kills us off. First black man dies all the time. What does that do to kids in movies? In the entertainment industry, we have zero representation. They have over-representation. Not only over-representation, but they take our parts. Gods and Kings, movies about royalty in Africa, played by roles by so-called white people. Elizabeth Taylor, Orlando Bloom. These are Egyptian kings. All right. On the other hand, their kings and queens, we're relegated to slaves, servants, the comic relief, the dork, the criminal, the jock, the sidekick to the sidekick, the angry black man, the angry black woman. Minstrel shows. For people who don't know, look up minstrel shows. Minstrel shows depicting us as dumb. Just so fucked up. So-called white man dressing up as black man in blackface to convince the world. These are shows that existed for decades. 40, 50 years of these programs airing on television, airing on the radio. They had to program you through the radio, through the newspaper, through the TV. And then when that started to die, they just got so-called black people to play those roles. In the television of today, all the shit that's on BET, like I said, who owns these networks? That ratchetness, all that shit that they're showing, that's nothing but a modern-day minstrel show. And in these shows, emasculating our men, masculinizing our women, destroying our culture, installing all this LGBTQ stuff, and then making it part of our community because